Hi everybody, I'm back again, doing this part 2 of Tyrannosaur evolution. Now, in part 1, I actually said that I'm actually going to talk about the behavior of some of these Tyrannosaurs. Now, when we actually talk about behavior, I mean, it's very hard to actually determine what behavior is in the fossil record. But we actually use footprints, we can use pathology, which is basically injuries or otherwise any abnormal or not normal things that are happening in the bones of certain dinosaurs. But basically, when we actually look at tyrannosaurs, we can actually look at some of the footprints. There are some tyrannosaur footprints that have been found, especially in Mongolia. They got the Tarbosaurus footprints. In North America, Tyrannosaurus rex tracks are very rare, but there's one in New Mexico. They say there's been a couple found, like in South Dakota and even Montana. But even though it's still really hard to determine if they are Tyrannosaurus rex tracks, but we'll have to see. But there hasn't been a trackway found. There hasn't been a Tyrannosaurus rex trackway that has been found totally yet. But the South Dakota one is pretty close. Maybe the Montana ones are pretty close, but most of them are just pretty much tracks that are just basically just like 2 feet, basically. And so we can actually, but a recent discovery in British Columbia where they found 3 trackways of tyrannosaurs moving in unison, basically moving at the same time, and they're just narrowly spaced apart. And that kind of shows that they interacted with each other. And with Dr. Phil Curry, who actually is a really good expert on tyrannosaurs, he actually has come up with the idea that tyrannosaurs and probably some other large carnivorous dinosaurs hunted in packs, basically. And I kind of tend to agree with them, because you see, if you actually have herding animals that some of these dinosaurs are actually hunting, you need to break the defenses of the herd, which is basically you need to isolate the herd and isolate members of the herd so that way you can actually get your meal. But with carnivores, they need to actually pick out the weakest, or oldest, youngest, or the sick, or even injured, and they will actually go after the ones that are pretty much easy to catch. They're not going to go after the fully healthy animals, because you see, the full healthy adults would be too much of a fight, and pretty much they don't want, and carnivores don't want to get injured, and that's the one thing that carnivores will actually make sure they will do, is that they make sure they don't injure themselves. But carnivores get injuries all the time for hunting. If you look at the pathologies on tyrannosaurs, Sue is the #1 tyrannosaur specimen that you actually can look at for pathology. Because you see, she has so many injuries on her skeleton that they were probably all for hunting. Because first of all, she's got a fused vertebra in the tail, right in the middle of the tail. And it probably was from either being stepped on or otherwise just a really bad injury that this dinosaur actually suffered. There's also abnormality in the left leg of Sue, and some people think it was probably a broken leg and pretty much healed kind of like that. But paleontologists are saying that this was actually an infection. So there was an infection that happened in Sue, and pretty much it got into the bone, and then she survived it, or he or she survived it, and then pretty much lived on through it. But it probably debilitated the ability to walk and run. So pretty much it probably actually was a really painful injury. But also, this dinosaur's got cracked ribs, and they were pretty much healed. So pretty much a really nasty injury. Her shoulder or the shoulder was cracked, and so that was a pretty painful injury. And also, there's in her right arm, she has like this little pit in her upper arm bone, of where a tendon actually snapped off from the bone and just left like this little pit in her bone, in the bone, and pretty much it healed over, and that was a painful injury. So pretty much this Tyrannosaurus Rex's arm would have been dangling, and pretty much couldn't even move that arm for a good period of time. But even though healed, and also there's the injuries, but basically the holes in the back of her jaw, but that was from a parasite basically. So pretty much this dinosaur lived through infection and injuries, and so that suggests that these dinosaurs lived very tough lives. Carnivores usually have the really hard lives of the from beside, not because you see the herbivores, they can have a rough life, but even though it's a tad bit easier for them because they don't go through injuries very much, but even though they will suffer infection if they actually do get gashed or otherwise bitten from a carnivore. But even though most of them tend to survive, carnivores tend to usually get injured all the time, and that just happens all the time. That happens in life basically. You do get injuries at some point. It's like with me. I got injuries throughout my life. I had a somewhat of a broken bone in my left index finger. I've had a sprained knee. I had tendonitis in the same knee, my left knee. And basically, I went through infection as well. I had a sinus infection a long time ago. But hey, that's part of life. And you see, Tyrannosaurs actually had that same way. In Stan, you actually find on the back of the skull, there's this little tiny hole on the back of the skull, and this hole is actually, if you actually put a Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth right in this hole, it matches. So Stan was actually bitten by another Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that actually shows that these dinosaurs fought each other on occasion, probably for territory or for food, and that was pretty much what they were actually doing most of the time, or otherwise fighting for mates. That would have probably happened. And I've heard recently that Stan might be a female T-Rex, so that might actually have some indications that maybe a male Tyrannosaurus Rex bit her in the back of the head and basically left this little hole in the back of her head, and pretty much healed. But that could have been from a mating ritual, And they're saying, and I've heard that Sue might be a male Tyrannosaurus Rex, so maybe it might be considering that the males were larger than the females. But who knows? Stan is an adult and Sue is an adult, so that actually kind of shows that these dinosaurs did go through rough lives. In the case of Albertosaurus and all those kinds of dinosaurs, there is actually fossil evidence of them actually being together. There's some Tyrannosaurus Rex specimens that have actually been found together as well. The Dry Island bone bed is the most famous bone bed of the Tyrannosaur fossils found in one space at the same time. And paleontologists have speculated whether or not this was actually an actual pack, or was this actually something else. But with behavior, it's very hard, and when you just have like just a bunch of piles of bones. But this find actually has from young Tyrannosaurs, basically from 2-year-olds to 25-year-olds to adults. So basically, this is actually a family. And so with a family group, you can actually communicate very well with each other, and also you can actually coordinate a a lot better. But in the case of dinosaurs, with coordination of actually trying to hunt, you don't really need a lot of brain power to be a good predator. Dr. Larry Whitmer actually said that, and that's a really good point. You don't really need a lot of brain power to become a really good predator. I mean, you can chase your prey, you can actually ambush your prey, or otherwise, if you want to work in a cooperative group, you can actually make sure that you actually have the right you can actually make sure you have certain members of the group actually go out and chase the prey, separate the group of the prey, and then pretty much get like one or two members of that herd isolated, and then basically those young animals would actually get those one or two individuals toward the adults, where they basically will make the killing blow. And with fossil evidence to support of whether or not that Tyrannosaurs were hunters or scavengers, that is just a debate that's been on for years and years. And I would actually say that that all carnivores are opportunistic predators. They're opportunistic. Basically, they can hunt and scavenge. Now, all of you may have an opinion about whether or not Tyrannosaurus rex was a hunter or a scavenger, but I am going to leave that up to you. And also, but basically, my opinion, it's both a hunter and a scavenger, but it probably hunts most of the time, because basically, when you're that big, basically you don't need to scavenge a lot. You see, if you're that big, you need to get food really quick. And basically, if there is something that has been, because you see, carnivores are not going to wait around for something to die every day. So pretty much, they need to go get food right away. And it's basic. And if there's basically no dead animals within their area, they're going to have to go hunt. And you basically, Tyrannosaurs have the equipment to hunt, and basically is that they got speed, they got the sense of smell, they got the sense of sight, they got the sense of hearing. They actually have the killing tools. Basically, they use their jaws most of the time. That's why you actually see that Tyrannosaurs were not using their arms very much, and that's why Coelurosaurs most of the time use their jaws a little bit more than actually their hands to actually capture their prey. You see, most carnivorous dinosaurs don't move their arms very, very much. It's because they're very restricted of their movement. So they don't need to actually use their hands a lot. They can use their hands to grasp the prey if they need to. But with Tyrannosaur arms, especially the ones that are large, they actually have the small arms. Because here's a hand of a Tyrannosaurus rex, and here's the hand of a Albertosaurus, like I showed earlier. Basically, the Tyrannosaurus rex hand, the bones are actually a bit more robust than what the Albertosaurus one is. So pretty much, Tyrannosaurus rex was actually using their arms and hands probably a little bit more than what Albertosaurus was. But basically, their size is almost nearly similar. And pretty much Albertosaurus and Tyrannosaurus rex's arms are pretty much nearly the same length as my arms, basically. I got long arms for my size, so pretty much I actually have that kind of ability to reach anything. But of course, I don't dunk a basketball. I'm not built for that. But anyway, with speed, as the Tyrannosaurs got bigger, they start getting slower and slower. And basically, the fastest of the big Tyrannosaurs, probably Gorgosaurus would. But even though Gorgosaurus is a medium-sized Tyrannosaur, it is actually probably considered the fastest of the large Tyrannosaurs. But even though Albertosaurus would actually be the one that will hold the title as the fastest of the large Tyrannosaurs, because it's got that slender body. And whereas Tyrannosaurus rex, it doesn't need to run very much. It's because with that weight, you don't need to be fast. You need to, because you see, with John Hutchinson, from Manchester or something like that. I can't remember, but he actually did a lot of work in speed in theropod dinosaurs, and he looked at Tyrannosaurus rex a lot, and basically used an elephant to actually compare the speed, because Tyrannosaurus rex and an elephant and an African elephant are nearly the same size. But Tyrannosaurus rex would have been a little bit more athletic than an African elephant, because basically it's got that higher metabolism, and also it's a carnivore. Carnivores tend to need to be fast. They need to be faster than their prey mostly, and so an adult Tyrannosaurus rex probably go between 15 to 25 miles per hour. Basically, if it was out in the open, and you needed to do like a high-speed chase type of test. Albertosaurus, though, would have probably gone over 30 miles per hour. Gorgosaurus probably actually could go faster than an Albertosaurus. Probably could actually go maybe close to 35 miles per hour. And so that will be pretty interesting to test, especially with Gorgosaurus. I'd like to see see if there's any evidence out there see if there's anything that has been published about Gorgosaurus' speed. If anybody knows, please leave in the comment section below from this video. And of course, with every kind of evolution, there's going to be extinctions. And with extinctions, with most of these Tyrannosaurs, it's going to be due to climate and new predators. But with Tyrannosaurus rex being the last of the Tyrannosaurs, it would actually be basically because of the asteroid or comet hitting the Yucatan Peninsula, but basically it was in the Gulf of Mexico around 66 or 65 million years ago, and then pretty much caused huge shift in the climate, and that's basically it's because when a meteorite hits in the ocean, basically it hits that ocean floor, it hits the bottom of the ocean. It's basically going to have a lot of reactions, especially if there's limestone. Limestone would actually cause chemical reactions as well. And so basically with that, you add heat and the water if you add heat from the impact and also from the asteroid or comet, and then basically you add water from the ocean, it's going to cause a huge chemical firestorm. Basically, it's going to produce acid rain, and also along with the water, it could actually create huge tsunamis, and that would actually cause that. But also, the recent evidence has actually shown that maybe the asteroid or comet, with that impact, probably actually created earthquakes and then basically activated the volcanoes that were all around the world, and basically that would have caused a big impact in the environment, especially with all the poisonous gases being erupted from the volcanoes, and so that actually has a huge impact on that. And many of you are going to be wondering, why did you talk about Nanotyrannus? I would actually say that that is up to you, whether or not you want to talk about Nanotyrannus at some point. I mean, I talked about Nanotyrannus at some point in one of these episodes. I can't remember which one, but it's still a debate. So I would say I'm up in the air on that one. So pretty much, if you want to let me know what you think, what Nanotyrannus is it a juvenile, a Tyrannosaurus rex, or is it its own species? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, this will conclude the Tyrannosaur evolution episode. So this is part 2, and I hope you actually learned a lot out of this, because this is my favorite topic to talk about, and especially that the Tyrannosaurs are actually my favorite group of dinosaurs, and they're very interesting to study, but also they're the most studied. But even though I understand it's been the most studied, but I'm not really going to go into the behavior factors when I go into this science. When I'm in this science, I'm actually going to talk about their pathology, and actually how they function, basically how they actually function, and what would their, and also talk about their senses, basically the cascading the brain cases, see what the differences are from each tyrannosaur. All right, that's it for now. Now, this coming Saturday will actually be an answering questions episode. So if you got a question about dinosaurs or any other prehistoric life, feel free to email me at dinocris71@gmail.com. Also, you can go on my Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts with Dino Chris. Like the page, you can actually post your questions in the comment section on any Facebook post. You can also follow me on Twitter at CSGRALL. I post pretty cool stuff on there. But also, make sure you keep your questions short and to the point. And also for younger people out there, take care of people around you. And also for younger people out there, make sure to listen to your parents, your teachers, and your guardians. Those are the best motivation you can have for good education. It's very important to have a good education because with a good education, you get a good job in the future. All right, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys this Saturday.